Ever wonder why modern sleep feels so broken? We've got blackout curtains, memory foam, and $1,000 sleep tracker, and still wake up feeling like we fought in a war. Ancient Romans didn't have any of that. Yet somehow, they slept better. How? Once you see what the Romans did at night and why, you'll start to wonder if we've been doing it wrong this whole time. To the Romans, sleep wasn't a weakness. It wasn't a luxury. It was a discipline, a philosophical practice, a tool to sharpen the mind and fortify the body. The kind of thing you'd schedule with the same gravity as a Senate meeting or a sacrifice to Jupiter. Because the Romans, especially the elite, were obsessed with rest. If you were a wealthy Roman in the 1st century CE, your day wasn't a linear climb from sunrise to exhaustion. It was a cycle, a deliberate alternation between action and recovery. And right in the middle of that daily rhythm, a nap. It was called the meridiatio, the midday rest. And it wasn't just for children or the elderly or those trying to sleep off a hangover. Senators took meridiatio, generals took meridiatio, philosophers, orators, even emperors blocked out sacred post-lunch hours for restorative dozing. In fact, scheduling a meeting during meridiatio was considered not just rude, but borderline barbaric. The Roman statesman and philosopher Seneca, a man who advised Nero and still found time to ponder cosmic insignificance, wrote that sleep should be clean, consistent, and intentional. He warned against late nights, too much wine, and the kind of anxious thoughts that keep a man thrashing under his covers, like he's being attacked by invisible wolves. Sleep, for Seneca, wasn't just recovery, it was mental hygiene. And then there's Pliny the Elder, the encyclopedic mind behind natural history. This was a man who cataloged everything from volcanic eruptions to sea monsters to the proper way to roast dormice, and he had opinions about sleep. He noted that certain plants, like poppies and wild lettuce, could encourage healthy rest. He described the effects of oversleeping as dulling the senses, while praising a disciplined nap as a way to refresh the faculties. Even the Stoics, those famously unbothered philosophers of fate and virtue, held sleep in high esteem. To sleep well was to live well. Marcus Aurelius himself, yes, the emperor who still somehow manages to trend on Instagram, wrote in Meditations that a man's worth is measured not in hours worked, but in how well he returns to his work after rest. The point wasn't how much you slept, but how well and why. You were expected to rest. They saw sleep not as a pause button, but as a vital function of self-governance. A way to reset the soul. Because how could you rule a republic or a household if your mind was foggy and your body weak? But here's what really sets the Romans apart. They didn't leave good sleep to chance. They built something most of us have never known, a room designed to make you disappear from the world. Your bedroom is probably a temple to overstimulation. Glowing screens, blinking routers, half a dozen cables snaking from the wall, maybe even a panic-purchased sleep lamp you bought at 2 a.m. after reading that melatonin is the new magnesium. We treat sleep like a battle. Romans treated it like architecture, literally. Because Roman bedrooms, cubicula, as they were called, were designed with one goal in mind: sleep. Not productivity, not Instagrammable minimalism, not aesthetic vibes, just uninterrupted, sacred rest. And the key to that? Silence and darkness. Let's start with the size. Cubicula were small, surprisingly small. Not because Romans were minimalists, but because bedrooms weren't for socializing, working, reading, or whatever else we use our bedrooms for today. They were for sleeping, dressing, and occasionally, well, the things that naturally happen in private rooms with soft beds and closed doors. That's it. Anything else was the job of the atrium, the tablinum, or the bustling street outside. These rooms were deliberately tucked away. You wouldn't find them near the entrance of a Roman house or anywhere near the street. They were positioned deep inside the domus, past courtyards, atriums, and other rooms where the business of Roman life happened. Privacy wasn't just a bonus, it was a requirement. Because if your neighbor's drunken dinner party or a passing street vendor could disturb your sleep, what was the point? The Romans didn't just hope for silence, they engineered it. Walls were thick, sometimes absurdly so, especially in homes of the upper class. Made of layered brick or stone, plastered over and often reinforced with wooden beams, these walls did more than hold up roofs. They muffled sound. They turned bustling households into silent sanctuaries. And the best ones had 0 windows. None. No city noise, no moonlight, no intrusive rooster from next door. Just pitch black, monastic quietude. Some cubicula even had doors within doors, a clever trick to reduce sound further. Think of it as the ancient version of noise-canceling headphones, except made of cedar and designed by someone who probably owned a pet monkey. We know all this not just from texts, but from ruins. In Pompeii, we find bedrooms no larger than a walk-in closet, with thick walls, high thresholds, and only a small opening to a garden or corridor. In villas like those near Herculaneum, sleeping quarters were buried deeper than a philosopher's thoughts, completely insulated from public life. Even wealthy patricians didn't go big in the bedroom. They went deep, because they understood something we seem to have forgotten. Sleep isn't about luxury, it's about conditions, darkness, silence, privacy, not plushness or Pinterest boards. You can keep your 20-inch memory foam mattress. A Roman would have traded it for one night in a perfectly soundproof windowless cubiculum, and they'd have woken up refreshed, probably before dawn, ready to conquer Gaul or recite Cicero from memory. But that perfect night's rest didn't happen on a plush mattress or luxury linens. The real surprise, Roman beds were harder, weirder, and somehow exactly what the body needed. You know that sinking feeling when your mattress remembers your shape a little too well? When the memory foam hugs you like an overeager ghost? The Romans didn't have that problem. Their beds weren't designed to coddle. They were built for function, with a dash of style if you had the coin. A typical Roman lectus looked more like a minimalist daybed than anything you'd find at IKEA. Think sturdy wooden frame, often in walnut or beech, lashed with leather or rope webbing to hold the mattress in place. Some versions came with headboards carved into gentle curves or scrolling acanthus leaves, depending on your taste and tax bracket. Wealthier homes might flaunt beds of bronze or ivory, sometimes with legs shaped like animal paws, because who wouldn't want to sleep on something supported by a lion's foot? But the real question is, what did it feel like? The mattress, or torus, wasn't a single standard. It was layered, local, and seasonal. The basic version was a cloth or leather sack filled with hay, replaced regularly because, well, hygiene. Hay was breathable, cheap, and decently springy if you knew how to pack it. Wool was a warmer option, though it tended to clump without regular fluffing. For the higher-ups, feathers were the preferred stuffing. Pliny the Elder raved about the softness of goose down, though he also complained about the insects that share the bed with such luxury. Even in ancient Rome, bedbugs knew where the rich lived. For rural types or the extra thrifty, moss was a common alternative, cool in summer, insulating in winter, and naturally pest repellent. Soldiers on campaign stuffed mattresses with dry grass or fern. Not plush, but better than sleeping on packed dirt or whatever passed for a Roman battlefield. These beds weren't flush to the ground either. Raised platforms were the standard, not for aesthetics, but practicality. You're living in a world where scorpions, spiders, and the occasional hungry rat are all real concerns. Keeping your sleeping body 2 feet off the floor could be the difference between a good night's rest and a painful morning surprise. Elevation helped with temperature control too. In summer, airflow under the bed cooled things down. In winter, it insulated you from the stone floor's chill. Romans didn't waste heat or comfort. Wealthy homes sometimes placed braziers nearby, glowing coals inside small urns to take the edge off the night's cold. Though some writers warned against sleeping too close, there are records of drunken dinner guests setting their bedding on fire after falling asleep mid-monologue. Rome wasn't always glamorous. Despite the simplicity, there was elegance in the routine. Sheets were linen, blankets might be wool, or in rare cases, dyed textiles imported from the East. A favorite pillow might be filled with reeds or feathers. Everything served a purpose. No overkill, no clutter. Sleep didn't need selling. The bed did its job. You lay down, you slept, you got up with the sun. But what happened before you slipped between those linen sheets? The Romans had a nighttime routine. So precise, so strangely soothing, it puts modern sleep hygiene to shame. We act like bedtime routines are some modern breakthrough. Blue light blockers, weighted blankets, sleep podcasts narrated by suspiciously calm British men. But Romans had a bedtime routine, so dialed in, it would make a wellness influencer weep. They didn't call it sleep hygiene, of course. They called it living properly. A Roman evening began with the slow winding down of the day's noise. After the evening meal, cena, typically eaten before sunset, people began shifting into rest mode. And crucially, they didn't stuff themselves before bed. Roman doctors, like Galen and Celsus, warned against eating heavily in the evening. Too much food, they believed, clouded the mind, stirred up strange dreams, and made the body sluggish come morning. Instead, if anything passed their lips late at night, it was a small cup of diluted wine, just enough to soothe, not sedate. Sometimes steeped with herbs like fennel or thyme. Wine was medicinal, social, even sacred. But it wasn't an excuse to drink yourself into oblivion. That was reserved for festivals or bad poetry readings. Cleanliness played a central role. Public bathhouses closed at dusk, but many Romans still washed before bed, especially the feet. Walking all day in dust and sandals made this a necessity. But it was more than hygiene. Washing the feet was a symbolic act, shedding the dirt of the world before slipping into sleep. Like clearing the mind by first clearing the souls. Scent was another layer of their nighttime ritual. Romans loved scented oils, olive oil infused with herbs or flower essences, lavender, myrrh, sometimes chamomile or mint. A bit of oil rubbed on the temples, the neck, or the soles of the feet created a kind of sensory permission to drift off. It also helped soothe the skin after a day in the sun, or the market, or the Senate, depending on your profession. Incense played its part too. The soft curling smoke of frankincense or spikenard helped mask the city's less pleasant aromas. Remember, no sewage treatment plants, and created a calming atmosphere. Households might burn lavender, rosemary, or chamomile to settle the air, especially during illness. Not because it smelled nice, but because it felt right. Romans didn't separate the physical from the mental. They believed scent could move the soul. Philosophers embraced this too. Seneca noted the value of solitude and soft light before sleep. Not overstimulation, not entertainment. A quiet hour, a clean body, a clear head. Some households even had designated resting rooms. Not bedrooms, but dim, quiet spaces meant for reading, reflection, or prayer before retiring. Like a decompression chamber for the ancient mind. All of it worked toward the same goal: prepare the body, calm the mind. And then let sleep do what sleep does best. You didn't need a sleep score. You needed warm water, clean sheets, and a room that smelled like a hillside in spring dot, and maybe a little wine, because Rome. But here's the part no one talks about. What if you did wake up in the middle of the night? For the Romans, that wasn't a problem. It was an opportunity. Ever try falling back asleep after looking at your phone at 2 a.m.? Congratulations, you've just nuked your melatonin and booked a front row seat to the 3 a.m. existential crisis. Romans didn't have this problem. Not because they had stronger willpower, but because they built a world that didn't pick fights with nature. Light, for starters, was handled with extreme care. Romans didn't flip switches or flood their homes with artificial brightness. If you needed to move around at night, you reached for an earthenware oil lamp. Simple, low, flickering. The kind of light that whispered instead of shouted. It cast soft shadows, kept the eyes relaxed, and preserved the body's sense of night. No harsh glare, no retinal assault, just a pool of warm glow that lit only what needed lighting. It's easy to underestimate how important this was. Even small amounts of artificial light can sabotage sleep, and Romans, unknowingly, nailed it. Their nighttime world was dim, warm, and calm. The gods didn't invent circadian rhythm, your cubiculum did. And they didn't just stop with light. Take climate control, for example. Rome gets hot, sticky, cloying, sleep-stealing hot. But instead of blasting air conditioning into every room, Romans used material science and a little bit of geometry. Enter the clay pillow. Yes, that's right. Not every Roman slept on feathers and linen. Some used curved ceramic headrests, especially in hotter regions like southern Italy or Egypt. The shape cradled the neck while letting the air flow freely beneath the head. And because clay naturally cooled overnight, it stayed refreshingly chilly even on warm evenings, like a built-in ice pack for your overheated brain. These weren't mass-market gimmicks. They were real solutions, thoughtful, elegant, and rooted in the same idea that ran through all Roman sleep culture. Follow nature, don't fight it. Nowhere was this philosophy clearer than in how they aligned themselves with the sun. Romans didn't wake up to alarms. They rose with the light. The whole city breathed according to solar rhythm. Sunrise wasn't a mood, it was a metronome. Shops opened when the first beams struck the forum. Market stalls packed up as shadows grew long. The only people working past sunset were slaves, bakers, or poets on a deadline. This rhythm gave sleep a natural boundary. No one was staying up late. What would you do? Argue in the dark? They treated sunset as a signal. Start winding down. Let the body slow. Let the light fade. And when the birds stopped singing, the world followed suit. It's no surprise then that sleep disruptions were rare. There was no blue light, no 24-hour news cycle, no caffeine past noon. If someone did struggle to sleep, it was seen as a sign of imbalance, either physical, emotional, or spiritual. And the cure wasn't another pillow. It was a reset, more sun, better food, quieter evenings. Today, we chase rest with gadgets and apps. Romans achieved it with pottery and candlelight. And if they woke at 3 a.m., they didn't panic. They just rolled over, enjoyed the cool air, and trusted the dark to carry them back. But not always. Because some nights, waking up wasn't a disruption. It was part of the plan. If the Roman gods had invented an app, it wouldn't track your steps. It'd tell you when to take a nap. Because for all their military drills, Stoic philosophy, and stone-carved schedules, the Romans knew how to respect a good pause. Rest wasn't laziness, it was strategy. And they practiced sleep the way they did everything else, with structure. Take the meridiatio, the midday nap. This wasn't just for the elite lounging in villas. It was for everyone. Merchants, scribes, field hands. By early afternoon, when the sun hit its blazing peak and brains turned to porridge, life slowed. Shops closed, the streets thinned. People retreated to shaded rooms, courtyards, or quiet corners to do the most sensible thing imaginable: sleep. It wasn't a luxury, it was built into the rhythm of the day. The poet Martial even wrote with mild annoyance about people who interrupted the meridiatio, as if barging in during someone's shower or funeral. That's how sacred it was. Letters were often delivered after, not before. Workers resumed their trades after waking. The city, in many ways, had 2 mornings. But what's truly fascinating is what happened after sunset. Romans didn't sleep in one long, uninterrupted stretch. Their nights were often segmented, biphasic, as modern sleep scientists call it. First sleep began a few hours after dusk, typically lasting until midnight or a bit after. Then came a natural waking period, a time of quiet wakefulness, somewhere between dream and dawn. And no one thought it was strange. During this window, maybe an hour, maybe 2, people did all kinds of things. Read scrolls, whispered prayers, wrote letters by oil lamp. Philosophers reflected. Lovers, well, reflected in their own way. Some used the time to check on household fires, tend to the sick, or finish small chores in silence. It was a pause between rests, a floating island in the middle of the night. Even medical texts from the period reference this watching hour. One Roman physician suggested it was the best time to contemplate the meaning of dreams from the first sleep. Another advised a gentle stretch, maybe a quiet stroll around the peristyle, if the mind was restless. No panic, no pressure to get back to sleep. Just time, and trust in the body's rhythm. This two-part sleep wasn't considered abnormal. It was natural, logical. Romans simply accepted that the body might need to shift gears before morning. In other words, they didn't just sleep more, they slept better. Because to them, rest wasn't an afterthought. It wasn't squeezed between obligations. It was the obligation. Even the Stoics, who loved self-denial, never saw sleep as weakness. Seneca called it the reward of a well-used day. And even Marcus Aurelius, emperor and insomniac, wrote that sleep was nature's way of saying, you've done enough. So if you're up at 1:30 a.m., don't curse the clock. Light a candle, write something, sit in the quiet. Romans did. Then, when your body asks for it, sleep again. So why can't we do the same? Let's be honest, modern sleep is a mess. We've got blue light in our eyes, noise in our ears, and stress doing laps around our brains. We fall asleep to podcasts, wake up to alarms, and scroll ourselves into insomnia. It's not that we've forgotten how to sleep. It's that we've built a world where good sleep is nearly impossible. The Romans didn't have to fight their environment to rest. Their world encouraged it. Bedrooms were dark, silent, and purposefully placed. Nights were lit by gentle flame, not LED glare. They aligned with the sun, napped without guilt, and understood that a clear mind and tired body are the best medicine. And no, we can't all move to a villa in Latium, but we can steal their strategy. Start simple. Ditch bright lights in the evening. Use warm, dim bulbs, or better yet, candles. Make your bedroom boring again. No screens, no distractions, just a space for sleep. Add scent. Lavender, chamomile, rosemary, herbs Romans used for a reason. Sleep isn't just physical, it's sensory. Embrace rhythm. Try sleeping earlier. Wake with the sun if you can. Don't fear waking up at night. Use it. Write something. Think. Breathe. You're not broken. You're Roman. The final lesson? Stop obsessing. Romans didn't track REM cycles or download sleep apps. They listened to their bodies. They trusted silence. They gave sleep the space it needed. If we can borrow even a sliver of that old world wisdom, strip sleep back down to ritual, rhythm, and rest, we might just remember what it feels like to wake up clear, calm, and fully human. That's not nostalgia. That's survival.